Into the Fold is a podcast on mental health issues, produced by the Hogg Foundation for Mental Health. I'm your host, Ike Evans.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
Racism and racial violence, especially when committed by authorities, causes trauma, even for those not directly affected. We know that for Black communities in the U.S., police violence is one of many social determinants of mental health. The pain and passion that we are seeing in protesters across the nation, including Texas, is rooted in deep historical and cultural trauma. Historical trauma is a topic that has come up on multiple occasions throughout the history of Into the Fold, and is one of the topics that I'm going to dive into with my panel of experts. Dr. Christen Smith is Associate Professor of African and African Diaspora Studies and Anthropology, as well as Director for the Center for Women's and Gender Studies at University of Texas at Austin. Dr. Ryan Sutton is Director of the Heman Sweatt Center for Black Males at the University of Texas at Austin. And then our third guest is Latasha Taylor, a mental health organizer and a former Hogg Foundation Policy Fellow. Christen, Ryan, and Latasha, I'm delighted to have all three of you back. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, so my first question very simply is, how have you all been doing? How are you doing with all of this? And for the sake of this question, you're not allowed to say just, oh, fine, or okay, but something true and revealing about, because I've been roiled by all kinds of feelings, going back to early June, and I would imagine it would be the same for the three of you.
I'll say for me, kind of what you said, there's been a lot of mixed emotions because life still goes on. So I think the underlying emotion that I carry is exhausted, tired, right? Tired from what we're facing, tired from what we're seeing, tired from having to negotiate the pros and cons of life at this time. I recently brought my daughter into the world about a month ago, and I found myself even in that period trying to negotiate the joys of bringing a child into the world with the anger, the frustration, the sadness, the despair of what was going on in society. So still walking through life, managing, seeing these negative emotions, but then also trying to give myself permission to experience the positive ones that still happen in life as well. So tiresome.
I think that for me, my experience has been really similar. In addition to a just general sense of exhaustion, both kind of physical exhaustion and a mental kind of exhaustion, not only just from the protests that really started to be sparked around the killing or lynching of George Floyd, but even before that with the sheltering in place and the coronavirus crisis. It's just been, I think if there's one word that I could think of is overwhelmed. But I think that in addition to that, I've also been feeling a sense of hope around the protests. I think that just seeing the words defund the police trending on Twitter was really inspiring in an interesting way, something I thought I would never see. And seeing in my hometown, Ryan and I were just talking about my hometown of Washington, D.C., seeing the Black Lives Matter chapter of D.C. paint defund the police in front of Mayor Muriel Bowser's Black Lives Matter was really inspiring. There's been so many inspiring moments, but it's also been really, really painful. And it's been painful to juggle, specifically as a mother who takes care of two Black boys, who is really trying to keep some joy in the house amidst all of this complicated pain and suffering. I mean, the day that George Floyd was killed, or the day after, either the day of, I think it was the day of, was the day that my youngest son learned how to ride a bike with no training wheels. And so I think that to me, it really sums up how I've been feeling. It's this extreme pain and extreme joy all at the same time. And it's gut wrenching.
I think for myself, this is just an echo, just TYD Todd, just like that weight and that burden is just so heavy to carry. However, when everything was going down, particularly with George Floyd's death and the footage came out, I remember being on the phone talking to my mom, sort of in this like cocoon or in this space of my own, trying to make sense of everything. And I remember my mother being really upset. And then I said, I am confused because I'm afraid and scared, but this is the happiest day of my life, because I never thought that critical mass would happen with this movement. Everyone, I just didn't think. You hope and you hope and you pray, and then I'm on the ground, you know, like marching and picketing. And sometimes it's like maybe 15 or 20 of us there. And then even your own community is looking at you like, you know, please, or, oh, there's the radical people. And then you're looking for people in policy to make changes. You're looking at the heroes in academia, and then you're looking for the rappers and the celebrities. And then it was like old-fashioned organizing on the ground that shook the world. So I said, wow, I don't know how to feel because I'm scared. And first I was sad, and then I got mad. And then I was just like, oh my gosh, this is really happening. This is critical mass. This is a point in history where, you know, that moment when nobody cares is what hurts the most is happening, and nobody seems to care or do anything. And now people care or are caring and saying something and doing something. That was gratifying for me. So I'm excited too now. I'm excited too.
Let me ask another question, starting with this, you know, with the starting point of something that I've been experiencing lately, and that is that, you know, since all of this started, it's not uncommon for me to hear from well-wishing non-Black friends who are, you know, to be fair to them, genuinely curious about my well-being and so forth, which I do appreciate. But I mean, to put it maybe a little bit less kindly, I found myself in conversations where it seems that the subtext is, so I just noticed that you're Black, and there are some Black things going on right now. How are you feeling? And I hope that this is not too much of a leading question for you guys, but I can't be alone in feeling that's its own kind of fatigue at times.
Well, I'll share a little bit, because I think that I've had parents at my kids' school who never started reaching out and wanted to do play dates randomly. And I think that, you know, part of what has been really difficult about that, and I hope that this is an opportune time to speak directly to those people who are not Black, who care and are trying to be kind, but it would be helpful for them to understand how that gets received. You know, at the height of everything with the protests, literally many times that checking in was really about them and not about me or my kids or my family. That was about them wanting me to comfort them at a time when they were starting to feel anxiety about everything that's going on. And it was masquerading as, oh, I'm worried about you. No, actually you're feeling uncomfortable and you want somebody to tell you everything's going to be okay. And so you reached out to me just to make sure that you're not racist. And I think that is part of the reason why I have been careful to be kind, but also to not give my time to those people. And to be very deliberate about saying, you know, I really appreciate that you would like my attention right now, but I have things that are urgent to do in terms of the preservation of my life, my family's lives, and the lives of Black people everywhere. And so your feelings are going to have to hold on for a minute. And I think that that's really tough for people. And I think it's really, really tough primarily because most people aren't aware that that's what they're doing. And most people would balk and become defensive if someone were to say that to them. But recognizing that I'm not talking about anybody in particular, I would like to share with those who are listening that that's exactly what's going on. It is rarely about comforting us, and it is mostly about their feelings of anxiety and the kind of habitual ways that the privilege of white supremacy affords people this idea that Black people are here to comfort them all the time, especially Black women. And so, you know, people want a hug from me and they want me to listen to their feelings and they want to cry around me. It's the same thing that happened when Trump got elected. The day after Trump got elected, Lord have mercy, literally my white colleagues were coming up to me and asking me for a hug. And it was about them and their need to be comforted. And the fact that, you know, and you mentioned Aunt Jemima, but she's really apropos right now because it's that mammy figure, right? This feeling of panic and then needing to lean on Blackness and particularly Black women to feel better. And I think that the best way to deal with that, if folk are really concerned, you know, reach out, say, hey, I just want to check on you. No need to call me back. No need to do anything. If you need anything, let me know. And some of my white friends did that. And I really deeply appreciated it. Others just straight brought food or brought something and dropped it off and asked no questions and asked for no time. And I appreciated that too. But I think that folk have to be real careful of wanting to feel useful and wanting to feel accepted and loved by simply reaching out and then wanting us to give them something in return. That wanting to give us something in return is not about us.
I agree with that. And I think there's a level to this that kind of infuriates me because at some level, I think it's a minimization of what's going on. And you kind of minimize what's going on to be direct racism, right? We're talking about structural issues. We're talking about systematic issues that have been in part of this country for hundreds of years. And it gets minimized into this almost day-to-day microaggression kind of ways. Are you okay? I think it's a lot about comforting them, as Christian said, but I think a lot of it also has to do with them remaining ignorant about the issues in this society. We've been obviously dealing with racism for hundreds of years in this society. Over the last decade and a half, we see the advent of social media. We see police shootings and other lynchings and harassments happening via social media. We're a decade and a half into social media, and people still want to act like this is new. People still want to act like, I did not know. I didn't know this was going on. I'm shocked. And I think there's a level of privilege in your ignorance to hold on to the fact that you don't have to know, that you don't want to know, that when time elapses, you can forget again, go about your life until the next shooting and say, I didn't know again. Instead of saying, okay, what do I need to do in order to use my privilege in order to make a systematic structural change to the society that we're living in? And I think that a lot of this reaching out says, okay, this pacifies my need to be comforted. This pacifies me having to do anything. I could do that, pat myself on the back, and then go along with my life as normal, when that's not the case. And that's not the case for Black people in this country who can't afford just to have a conversation and then move on.
I feel like that moment when I'm in church and I'm like, preach, because I just needed to hear it. I just needed to hear somebody say that it is not my responsibility, it is not my obligation to make you feel better. It is my responsibility right now to take care of Black lives. And I think we are dying, like across the board. And I am just not in a position to try to explain to any person that connection between how racism kills. That when you're sitting if you're a white person and you're in a place in a space of privilege and you're really upset and I don't want to have to deal with this, it's like you don't want to have to deal with this because you feel safe, but the police keeping you safe, watching television and saying, well, that defund the police, they're crazy, and not even wanting to have a conversation and understand what that means, that cops aren't rolling around your neighborhood every day. You don't have to deal with it. I think it's funny because a couple of my family members were talking about the incidents that happened in Central Park with the quote unquote Karen incident. I think that really was her name. And she was like, a brother can't even go bird watching. It was like, trying to laugh at it and make light of it. But like literally, you can't go bird watching. The one brother that played the violin, and they had a vigilance, is that the word, where violin players came out. And I think white people were shocked when those police came at them. They're like, but wait a minute, we're the good guys. And I think that they're getting a taste of what we live with day in and day out. And I feel like it is not my obligation, it is not my responsibility to coddle you and to make you feel better. Right now, I'm worried about Black lives. And I don't know how to say that, whether it's with COVID coming at us real hard and real fast, whether it's with, first y'all came for the brothers and locked them up, now y'all are coming for the sisters and locking them up, and then even with juvenile detention, y'all are in our schools. I heard one person say, well, what can I do? How can I help? And maybe we should maybe Black people need to just put more money into the school system. And I'm like, the police are in our schools. Like, a lot of people don't get it. They are in our schools already. There isn't enough education in the world when you have police invading our schools, the things happening with young Black girls, with adultification, all these tag words and keys that a lot of Black folks don't even have the language to speak and say what is happening to them. I just don't have the time to try to educate, and that's not my responsibility. That's all I have to say on that. And if you get mad or your feelings get hurt, it makes me feel like, I don't know what it makes me feel like. I don't have any words for it. It makes me angry, and I think I'm allowed to be angry.
So, my last question, you're all involved in different things, and, with the added caveat of the conversation that we've been having about people expecting you to perform your Blackness for their benefit, is one way of putting it. But if there's any one thing that any would-be allies, not necessarily involving you in it, could do that would make you happy, whether it's contributing to a particular effort, anything you would recommend that someone read, or just be keeping in mind, let's say over the next month. So this is your opportunity to plug whatever might be near and dear to you.
I know for myself, I think of things that I want to say out loud, and I felt like I was too radical or I was asking too much. And now I feel justified and validated to say that here locally in Travis County, they're trying to build a new women's jail. 90% of women can be diverted because they're going in there for substance use, mental health, and trauma. I feel like building things that are going to impact Black women, and as a result, children are going to be put in foster homes, like a women's jail. Things like the mental health unit, that here Harris County has the largest mental health unit, not for people who have chopped up somebody in a theater, where people think a person with a mental health condition why they're being incarcerated, but they are Black people being incarcerated because they have a diagnosis, overwhelmingly Black men, just because they have a diagnosis and are experiencing homelessness. That 50% of the population here locally in Travis County that are experiencing homelessness are Black people. That I need somebody to do something, and not hiding behind this idea that this is the way it is, that this is a fact, and it's not a fact, it's a problem to me, and it needs a solution. So my call to action are, these are things that I haven't even seen an organization step up and to the forefront because it's too hot, it's too controversial. But I'm adamant about that. I don't care how much facts and data come out of UT and how much facts and data come out of these prestigious organizations. I am not comfortable that you all want to build a new women's jail to address the mental health conditions and trauma that we've just discussed before, and substance use. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with the mental health units being predominantly incarcerating people of color and that it's so large. I'm not happy with the idea that the medical model and the idea that if we just pump enough medicine into the situation, that's going to help all the things that we just talked about where trauma starts from. I'm not happy with the idea that once you change policy that you don't put in alternatives. It's my call to people is that the policies that you're passing, and then you're not providing alternatives. You know the trauma's happening, you know the things are happening to us, but y'all don't want to come up off that money, and y'all don't want to come up off of programming and alternatives, and you don't want to listen to the people being impacted. Those are my 3 acts for that. Up until this moment, first I was sad and crying, and then I got mad, and now I'm excited. I want to see these brave, bold, new things being enacted. I want you to find a solution, find a way to make these changes and not just give lip service and help carry this burden.
One, I just want to agree with everything Latasha just said. And I think that we have got to really focus on what's going on in our spaces. I think that the first thing that we can do is educate ourselves. And I think that, does that look like, actually looking up the books that outline what defunding the police means? Yes, please read those books. Like if we just say, take a week and go and actually read Mariame Kaba's most recent op-ed for the New York Times, where she breaks down why defunding the police is necessarily an abolitionist platform. She's a long-term abolitionist. She's been able to articulate this for a long time. Read Angela Davis's Freedom is a Constant Struggle. Read Ruthie Gilmore's The Golden Gulag. Look at, any kind of information or podcast or any kind of webinars. All these really heavy-hitting, brilliant Black women have been speaking, and you can consume that stuff for free on YouTube right now. It does not take a long time to actually figure out what these things mean and what the genealogy of these ideas is. So educating yourself is huge. But I think beyond just educating ourselves about the big issues, I really, really want to encourage everybody to sit down and learn, what is your local police budget? How much of the overall city budget goes to the police? How is that money allocated? How are services allocated? What are the needs in your immediate community? What are the things that you can do immediately in order to push back on that? I think one of the most inspiring things that I've seen the entire time was in LA. And when folk in LA, organizers in LA, were organizing to push back through city council on the LA police chief and try to get him fired. And they had a line of thousands of people waiting to call into the city council meeting and tell that man off. And yes, that seems like something really, really small. It is so powerful. And so if you're an ally and you don't know where to start, you figure out what are the immediate needs that Black people have in your community. Looking at all of the things that folk have been producing for quite some time to tell you what those needs are. And then you answer the call.
I agree. The only thing I would add to that is start challenging your status quos. Start challenging what you have just taken as normal practice. Start challenging the systems that you benefit from. You have to start asking the questions about why things are, and it's not diagnosing those who have been oppressed. It's not criminalizing the behavior of those who've been oppressed. understanding that we operate within a system that has very strong remnants of slavery still existing today within our culture that sets things up for just the way they are. But if you can start questioning and challenging the systems that you benefit from and asking those questions of the system, pushing those questions onto the system and challenging them, then you're using your voice for change. I would much rather you do that than just to call me and check on me. Save your breath for that. If you could start making those challenging statements, because that's going to make you feel uncomfortable. Once you start making statements that you realize you may lose some sense of power in what you're challenging, you might be on the right direction. And you have to get comfortable with that. So yes, educate yourself and advocate, and also utilize yourself in this work. That discomfort that you feel, use that to be a compass to where you're going, and not trying to avoid it, but leaning into it and then walking through it with follow through. So challenge and question the systems that which you benefit from.
I also wanted to add there, Matt, I like the idea. I think Patrice Cullors spoke a lot about, in a lot of her presentations, about imagining, using your imagination to, if I'm a white person and someone said to me, you had to pick another race to be, and you know you wouldn't pick black, imagine what a world would look like if you would pick black first. Imagine what a world would be like if things were not the way that they were. And I think defund the police and all the things that we're talking about here today starts with imagining, like settling down, and that discomfort that you feel of there's enough to go around. There is enough for us to, it's not this utopic thinking that everyone always goes to. They're like, well, what are we going to do without police? What are we going to do without jails and prisons? There was a time when we did not have prisons and jails, and I call them slave patrols. That's all the police is to me. There was a time we didn't have that. This is something that has built up over the last 20 or 30 years. I'm trying to say, use your imagination and imagine a world that didn't have these things in it. And that's the most, I want to leave on something positive. Use your imagination and imagine a world where being black was not, how do black people get to be human again? There's civil rights, there are all these rights we're fighting for. How do we get to be human again? What kind of world can we imagine where we get to I just want to be a human again. I want to participate in humanity and have the same rights as everyone else. And I really charge people to use their imagination and imagine how things could be better, and then how do you start on the ground to build towards that? I wanted to make sure that I said that before the podcast was over.
No, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to come on our podcast. Ryan, this is your third go around with us. Latasha and Christen, this is the second time, and it was just a real delight. Thank you so much for the rich dialogue, and just for giving voice to what I think many of our folks are feeling right now. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having us and doing this and making this space. We appreciate all the work that you do.
And I'm happy. I feel good.
Yeah, I'm about to say,
thank you.
There's a therapeuticness to it.
Yes,
Totally.
Yes.
Totally.
I had a sense it might get a little heavy, so I'm glad that you're at least if nothing else, you're feeling good. So.